sometimes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we're doing Daf Yomi here at Mizmor L'David. Just checking to make sure that the microphone's on as usual. Okay. We're going to start about 8 lines from the top of the page. Mizmor? No. Where it quotes the Mishnah, Afilu nachash karuch al akehol lo yafsik. Even if the snake is wound around a person's ankle while they're davening Amida, he should not stop the Amida. Amar Rav Sheshet lo shanu ela nachash al akrav kusa. So the Mishnah mentions a snake. He says if a snake winds around your ankle, but not a scorpion. And the reason they give is, according to the Gemara, if one does not threaten a snake, it's not going to bite. But a scorpion is aggressive and is going to attack without provocation. So Gemara raises an objection and says that if a person fell into a lion's den, then you testify, you can't if let's say he's married, and the question is whether his wife can get remarried. If there's testimony to the husband's death, then she can get remarried. But you don't do it with the lion's den because maybe the lions weren't hungry and they didn't kill him. But if you fell into a pit filled with snakes and scorpions, and if you saw you saw the guy fall in, or and you didn't, these are cases where they didn't find the body, and so these questions: did he live or did he not live? The snakes and scorpions, you say he died, and the woman can get remarried, his wife. So why it mentions snakes? We just said that if a snake is wound around somebody's ankles while he's standing in Mida, that he shouldn't stop because it's probably not going to hurt him. But here, it seems to contradict it. Shiny Hasam, the Agav, I try to speak in Sephardic accents, but I always slip into Ashkenazi, so you have to bear with me. Shiny Hatam, the Agav, Tzatza, Mazki. Rashi says that the pressure of him falling down on the scorpion and the snakes is going to be a provocation, and they're going to bite as a result of the impact. So Amar Yitzchak, Ra'ash Varim Posek. Ra'ash Varim Posek. If somebody's standing a Mida, let's say in a field or in a forest, and he sees cows, or barn, probably not in a barn. If he sees Shvarim, which Rabbi Steinsaltz says is probably the water buffalo. The great thing about this Gemara is Rabbi Steinsaltz used to be actually the head of the zoo. He and 2 other people were the board of directors of the Jerusalem Zoo for a period of time. And one of his favorite subjects is animals. So there's a lot of information about animals in the Gemara added on. So he gives a talk about the animals, probably water buffalo, maybe he gives the species. They're usually gentle, but if they're provoked, they could be dangerous, etc. Which you didn't need him to know. Ra'ash Varim Posek, the Tani Rav Oshaya, Marchikim Mishor Tam Chamishimama. Rabbi Oshaya teaches us that why would you stop your Amida if you see a buffalo or an ox, perhaps a water buffalo, which we call a tail in modern Hebrew? I have some up in the Hula Valley. What? You want to see water buffalo in Israel? Tail.
Like, you're missing all the people in your screen.
Let's get a better angle here. This is Neil, and Abisal. Morning talk show. And this is a low budget enterprise. Okay.
That's fine.
Neil's shy. Okay.
What
about...
Can I help you?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll just keep going, if you don't mind. This time is short. So, water buffalo. Again, Rabbi Yeshaya says if you're davening and you see a short tam, which is this ox has been seen to be not dangerous, then you stop here in the middle of your midah, you're standing in midah, you stop and you walk 15 amas, 25 meters. Mishor mu'ad kimulo enav. If it's a shor mu'ad, meaning how does he translate that? Shor mu'ad. It means an ox that has been proven
innocuous.
No, that's the first. The short tam is the innocuous one. The next one is
forewarned.
It's a forewarned mu'ad, meaning it has gored people 3 times. It has done serious damage, or perhaps even killed 3 times. Then they know it's a bona fide, dangerous, forewarned ox. And so the short tam, the innocuous one, get about 25 meters away from a forewarned ox, as far as the eye can see. You shouldn't even have them in your view. Tana mishmei de Rabbi Meir, reish Torah b'dikula salik la'ager. If you come across, you're davening, and not even davening, but just in general, if you see an ox who's eating his food from his basket, then you climb up to Shadeh Darga Mitutach. Salik la'agra u'shadi Darga Mitutach. Climb up to the roof and kick the ladder out from under you. Okay, an ox eating is so dangerous. So Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel finds this peculiar. It's just your average ox eating. We just said if it's an innocuous ox, why do you have to be so careful and run away and climb up to the roof and kick the ladder out? It says, this case we're talking about the black ox in the days of Nisan, in the month of Nisan. Because with such an ox, the devil is dancing between his horns. It's supposed to be an unusually dangerous ox, a black ox in the month of Nisan. I have no idea if this is true today. I was walking around the fields in Scotland once, and I believe it was in Nisan. I was climbing down into the wadi, and I saw a black ox. I think it was a black ox. It was kind of far away. I got pretty freaked out. I turned around and went the other way. This big horn staring at me. Thank God I'm still alive. So, Tanu Rabbanan, Maseh b'makom echad shehaya arvad v'haya mazik et habriot, ba'u v'hodi'o lo l'Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. So the rabbis taught the story. Once there was an arvad, is a kind of dangerous snake. What does he say there?
He just says arvad.
Yeah, but he gives like a genus or something.
Arvad, based on the condition of the Quran. Currently, the arvad is the type of snake which provides a large, very dangerous reptile. Unparalleled discussions in the Jewish ability developed is called a harvar boar. Some identify this as a black snake or a snake of the caliber genus, which
black snake or what?
A snake of the caliber.
Genus. You zoology buffs out there.
Which, although not poisonous, is very aggressive and bites.
Okay, so we're talking about a snake that it's not a poisonous snake, but it does damage. It bites. So it's called an arvad in the language of the Talmud. Mazik et habriot. So one place there was this arvad, and it was it's a dangerous animal. They went and told Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Now, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa is he's often associated in the Talmud with miracles. So Amar lahem haruli et choro. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa went and said, "Show me this snake's hole." Herehu et choro. They showed him the snake hole. Natan akevo al piachor. He put his foot over the hole. His heel, I don't know if he has shoes on, sandals on, or barefoot, it just says his heel. He put his heel over the hole. Yatsa u'mishacho u'met oto arvad. The Carlebach, is that it?
Talpiyot, or
it's another Aramaic.
Or a black snake.
The black snake came up and bit Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa on the heel, and the snake promptly died. Matlu al ktifo. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa took the dead snake and put it around his shoulders. Big hero. Revealed the Beit Midrash. And he went to the Beit Midrash. Okay. Amar lahem ru'u banai. Come and see him. He said to the sages in the house of study, look, my children. Ein arvad memit ele hachetz memit. This is proof that the snake does not kill, but rather the sin kills. What's the question?
Why is this? Oh, because
he didn't die. He apparently he was a righteous man who kept us away from sin. So the snake died instead of him dying. This doesn't make the question you might have is we just established that it's not a poisonous snake, so it wouldn't have killed. But the snake.
Also, can I ask questions?
Please. Yeah.
Like why? Going back to the word muad.
The Tormuad.
Muad. Like, why would he call it a forewarned? He's not forewarned. He's just a.
It's been forewarned about this ox that he's a killer. It's happened. He's gored or killed 3 times.
Right.
So muad is you've heard of a chazaka. A chazaka is a strong assumption, and then when the same thing happens 3 times, then there's an assumption that it could happen again. So we learn this specifically from the Bible in the case of the forewarned ox. It's not he's forewarned. It's people are warned about the ox. They don't go to the ox and say, I'm warning you, ox. Okay. When Chanina ben Dosa went and told what we just said in the Beis Midrash, Oy lo la'adam shepagabo arvad, v'oy lo la'arvad shepagabo Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Woe to the man who harms the black snake, and woe to the black snake that harms Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Next mission. You interrupt me anytime in questions or comments.
Okay.
Mazkirim gvorot geshamim tchiyat hametim v'she'ela b'berchat hashanim. So you mentioned the Mashiva Ruach U'Merida Geshem prayer that we say that it brings God causes the wind to blow and brings the rain. And we start saying that in the rainy season. After the holidays in the fall, it starts raining in Israel, and we stop saying it in Nisan in the spring. But the question is, where in the prayer do we put it in? We have the 18 benedictions, the whole subject of this chapter. It says we put it in the second of the 18 for the resurrection of the dead. She'elat birchat hashanim, when we're requesting a blessing for the years. 10 tal u'matar. You say, please God, give us dew and rain. When we ask for rains, it's called birchat hashanim, or she'elah. The Mishnah just calls it she'elah. What he's talking about is the request for rains. This Gevurah Hashamim is more a praise of God, how He's the great. The Gemara will discuss it, but how His greatness, and He's the one who brings the rains. And the She'elah request is us asking God to bring the rains, and we put that in the middle, in the blessing of the years, in the middle 13. The Havdalah b'chonan adat, and where do we put in the Havdalah prayer to separate, and Motzi Shabbos, to separate between the sacred and the profane? We put that in the 4th blessing of the blessing for the request for knowledge. Rabbi Akiva Omar bracha rev'it b'fnei atzma. According to Rabbi Akiva, that the Havdalah, the separation prayer after Shabbos, should be a separate blessing unto itself. Rabbi Eliezer Omer b'hoda'ah, and Rabbi Eliezer says that it should be put in the second to last blessing of Thanksgiving. The Gemara says, Mazkirin Gvor Shamim, my time. Why do we why dafka? The question the Gemara is asking is why dafka would we praise God for the one who brings the rains in the prayer for the resurrection of the dead? Amar Rav Yosef mitoch sheshikula k'tchiyat hametim. Rav Yosef explains like this, the same way rain falls and causes growth from the ground, so too the resurrection of the dead we spread out of our graves and in pristine bodies and everybody's party. So the fichach kavua in the best sense of the term. The fichach kavua b'tzchiyat hametim. Therefore, we put it in the resurrection of the dead. U'she'ela b'birchat hashanim. My time. So again, the Gemara asks, why do we pray for rain in the blessing for Parnasa? What's the reason? Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says because she Parnasa, because that's the most basic expression of livelihood is the rain coming down and causing the food to grow from the fields, produce to grow from the fields. Therefore, we put it in the blessing for livelihood. Why do we add the special prayer for the blessing of separating the sacred from the profane after Shabbos Kodesh in the blessing for knowledge? My time, Rav Yosef mitoch shi chochma, because that is wisdom. How does he say it?
Havdalah is saying about talking about Havdalah.
Yeah, we also learn in the Mishnah that Havdalah distinguished between Shabbat and weekdays. Is added in the blessing of who graciously grants knowledge. Yosef said Havdalah is recited in the blessing because it requires wisdom to distinguish between the two entities. So the Gemara says because it is wisdom, it means it requires wisdom to know the difference between the holy and the profane, between the Shabbat and the weekdays. My time, so because it requires wisdom, we put it in the blessing for wisdom. Rabbanan amre b'tchilat birchat shel chol. Sorry, b'tchilat bracha shel chol. In other words, of the first three blessings, Yomida, the first one is the shield of Abraham, the second the resurrection of the dead, the third is the holy God. These are all coming to stand before the king. And when you come to stand before the king, the Gemara I might be preempting the Gemara, sorry, I got up to here, I don't know what he's going to say in the next, for the remainder of this. So, when you're standing before the king, you don't ask for your needs and then praise the king. First, you speak of the king's greatness, and then afterwards you say, and by the way, great king, I need X, Y, and Z. So that's the first three are considered holy, and then when we're asking for needs is considered not profane exactly, but everyday chol. So the 13 little blessings when we're asking for our own needs, together with all of Israel, is called chol. So it's the first one. So there's a special significance to the first one. Why dafka the first? Why did the members of the Great Assembly decide that the very first request for our needs is the request for knowledge? Because knowledge is the beginning of everything. The most basic, the first thing we need is knowledge, and then everything else comes after. Amar Rabbi Ami Gedola Dea Shenitna Ben. Sorry. That's right. Rabbi Ami says Gedola Dea Shenitna Ben Shte Otiot Shenemar Yel Deot Hashem. Knowledge is great. How do we know knowledge is great from the verses in the Bible? Because Kiel Deot Hashem, because the word Deot, knowledge, or in the plural, is placed between two names of God. Komi she'en bo dea asur l'rachem alav, shene'amar ki lo am binotu al ken lo yirachamenu oseihu. So it's a very strong statement in the Gemara now.
Go ahead.
If somebody doesn't have knowledge, it's forbidden to show compassion to him, show mercy upon him. What kind of a horrid statement is this? The sages were great men. How could they say a thing like this? It's a dumb guy, you can't have mercy on him? It sounds cruel. So I did see a little bit more already, and in the Steinsaltz commentary, he quotes the Maharsha. Maharsha says, knowledge in this context does not refer specifically to intellectual capability, but rather to one's fundamental ability to conduct himself and live in accordance with that capability. So it's not talking about his... You understand?
His abstract knowledge, but his ability to apply his knowledge into his living.
Somebody could be brilliant and not apply it. I mean, I always like to use the example of Bertrand Russell, who was the world's expert in ethics, big professor in England.
Yeah.
And he was known to be a big philanderer. Right? So they asked him, like, how you're the big ethics professor and you're having affairs with your students and it's a known thing. How can you justify one and the other? And his answer was, is Einstein a triangle? There wasn't a connection. So that's what the kind of thing the Gemara is talking about. So that's one explanation of this from the Maharsha. And the proof text is that it's forbidden to show mercy on somebody who does not apply his knowledge. Is kilo ambinotu, is not a pupil of knowledge. Therefore, do not have mercy on his actions. It says in Isaiah 27. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Gadol Mikdash Natan B'Shtei. Because of the style now that is talking about things placed between two mentions of God's name, there's going to be a list of other things that are great because the Torah mentions them in a particular way, surrounded by the name of God. The Mikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, is a sign of its greatness is that it's placed between two letters, meaning two mentions of God's name, as it is written, Ha'alta Hashem Mikdash Hashem, in the song at the sea. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Kol Adam sheyesh bodea ki'ilu nivna beit mikdash b'yamav. Rabbi Elazar, he connects these two that we just said. That we just said the greatness of knowledge and the greatness of the mikdash, and so Rabbi Elazar says that for anyone who has knowledge, bear in mind that most of the Talmud was written after the destruction of the temple. Even in the Mishnah, only a few of the sages mentioned in the Mishnah ever saw the temple, the second temple built. So Rabbi Elazar, after the destruction of the temple, we were grabbing for the temple. Like, how are we going to fulfill the Torah now that we don't have like half, a third of everything mentioned in the Torah has to do with fulfilling laws in the temple. How are we going to do it? So we could fulfill it in an intellectual sense in the exile. So this is a good example of that. Kol adam sheyesh bodea ki'ilu nivna beit mikdash b'yamav. It's the hope, the everyday hoping for the rebuilding of the mikdash, saying anybody who has knowledge, it's as if the temple is built in his days. Based on the comparison of the previous two midrashim. Dea nitna ben shtei otiyot, mikdash nitna ben shtei otiyot. Knowledge is put between two mentions of God's names, and wisdom is placed between two mentions of God's names. Matkif la Rav Acha Karchina. Rav Acha Karchina objected to what was just said. If you say that, Gadol al nekama shenatna ben shtei otiyot. So how do you if that's true, how do you justify the greatness of vengeance? Is el nekamot Hashem. Vengeance could be variously interpreted. Sometimes vengeance is bad, sometimes vengeance is good. Sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's unwarranted. Amarle in. He answered him back, not necessarily related to the way I expressed it, but he said, yes, vengeance is good. In its place, it's great. If vengeance is warranted, it's great. Dahainu shenemar ula shtei nekamot halalu lama. Why does it say El Nakamot Hashem, El Nakamot Hofia in the Psalms? God of vengeance. God is a God of vengeance. May the God of vengeance appear. Achad l'tova, achad l'ra. One is good and one is in response to good and one is in response to evil. L'tova diktiv hofa Hashem ha'param. The good vengeance is the vengeance taken against the enemies of Israel, those who want to destroy Israel. In the end of the book of Deuteronomy, it mentions how God appeared in the mountain of Paran to take vengeance on those who attacked Israel. L'ra'ah diktiv el nekamot Hashem el nekamot hofiyah. And for evil, in response to evil, it says, may the God of vengeance appear, God is a God of vengeance, may the God of vengeance appear. And the commentary says that's referring to Israel, to an internal kind of what we loosely call self-hating Jew. The result of our hatred of our own tradition is a worthy kind of vengeance against that. Best revenge is living well. No, that's not a Jewish statement so much. The best revenge is maybe if living well means living according to the Torah, and then I don't know.
It's not saying.
I don't know what. What's the saying? I don't know what he's saying.
The best. It's not saying the best. It's just saying.
Vengeance for good, he shined forth from Mount Paran. Vengeance for evil, God of vengeance shine forth regarding to the punishment of Israel. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about taking vengeance against these crazy Haredi extremists who want to throw rocks at people driving on Shabbos. That doesn't do anything. That just makes people hate the Torah even more. It's like putting the on bottles. There's this ridiculous statement that used to be on the bottles.
Only 11 minutes.
Okay, it's worth saying. Used to say, please refrain from opening up the plastic soda bottle on Shabbos. Used to say it in Hebrew on the bottles. And it's ridiculous, the most ridiculous thing in the world. Because first of all, it's mutar to open the thing on Shabbat. Great post-human rabbis open it up. It's a machlokus, but a lot of rabbis say it's mutar. And the other thing is, what your average secular Jew is going to, is going to go to the fridge to look at the bottle. They're even in my refrigerator. What's he going to do on Shabbos? If you say that it's forbidden, he's going to say, they're in my refrigerator. He's going to take all the plastic bottles he can find and open them up on Shabbat just to show them. But I heard that from Rabbi Ebner, who lives down the street many years ago. Anyhow, back to the Gemara. It's talking about, that's not what it's talking about. We're talking here, El Nekavot Hashem it's when God takes vengeance on us for our evil, there is a positive side to it, meaning perhaps it wakes us up, but I don't know. Have to think about it. Amar le'in. We go down. Next sugya. Rabbi Akiva Omer Amra Bracha Revi'it. Rabbi Akiva said there's a separate bracha for Abdallah. Amar le Rav Shemin bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mikti. He says, consider, Anshe Knesset Gdola tiknu lehem leYisrael Berakhot Tefillot Kedushot Havdalot. The members of the Great Assembly established blessings and the prayers and holy prayers and blessings for separation between the sacred and the profane. Let's see how they established these prayers. Amarle batchila kavua batfila he'eshiru kavua alakos. So at first they put it all in the prayer, in the Amidah. Then Israel became affluent, and then they established it over the cup, meaning they had. Seems to be that's the way he explains it. That it's a sign of affluence. When they were affluent, they had wine and they had a chalice, and they established the Havdalah over the cup. Make sense? Okay. And then Hashiru al-Kos. He'anu, and then after they became affluent, they became poor. Chazru akavua batfila. They went back. The generation changed. And later, the generation after that, or maybe a few generations later, when they were less affluent, it became poor, they put it back in the prayer because people didn't have wine in cups. Okay. Vehen amru hamavdil batfilah tzarich she'avdil ala kos. And they said, if you say, we don't just say the Havdalah in the Amida prayer in Marav, Motzi Shabbos, but we also say it over the cup. Itmar nami, Amar Rechia bar Abba Amar Yochanan, Anshe Knesset Gdola tiknu lehem liyisur Berakhot tefilot kedushat v'avdalah. He says the same thing, but Tchila kavua b'tefillah. At first they established it in the prayer, they got rich, they established it over the cup, over the chalice. Chazru he'anu, the generation later, came poor, kavua b'tefillah. They went back and established it in the prayer. And then they said the same thing. It doesn't make sense, because if the reason that the affluence is they have wine, they have a cup, we're saying that they went and became. Well, it doesn't say they became affluent again and had. So what could it mean? You see the problem? Okay, I'm saying if they became poor again, and if the reason why if he's able, you see the key words, because most of the people were poor, so you're saying, they're poor, they don't have wine for Havdalah. People were very poor then. They didn't even have wine for Havdalah, so they can't say it over the cup. So don't worry, you can just say it in the prayer, you don't need it. All they had was a little bit of wine for Shabbos, enough for the two kiddushes, maybe the Ravid's 86 cc's for Friday night, and on Saturday they could say it over beer. Even you don't need a Ravid's in the day, you just need a little bit. And they didn't have it, so I said, if you have it, fine. If you don't have it, fine. Okay. Next. Sound like the doctor's office. Next. Amarava. If you're able, do it over the cup. Itmar nami Rabba Rav Yosef Amar Tzavayim. We're up to there. Itmar nami. It's Itmar introducing a Machloket Amarayim. Rabba Rav Yosef. They had a different opinion. They both said Hamavdil b'tfilah tzurich shavil kos. Somebody, if even though you said the Havdalah in the prayer, you go ahead again if you're able and say it over the cup. Amar Rava said, not Rabba, but Rava comes in and says Umot vinan ashmaiti, and we established it according to what we have learned. Ta'a v'lo hizkir gvur kshamim b'tchiyat metim. He's comparing it to another idea, that if somebody made a mistake and he didn't mention the praising God as the one who brings the rains, and if he didn't mention that in the blessing of the resurrection, and if he forgot to mention the request for rain in the blessing of livelihood, then in your standing in the prayer, what do? You go back to where you forgot, or maybe to the beginning. You have to return to the beginning of the Amida. But if you forgot to say Havdalah in the prayer for knowledge, you don't have to go back and say it again. Why? Because he has an opportunity afterwards to say it on the cup. Okay, nowadays with the halacha, if you forgot and you don't have to go back and say the prayer again, because you're going to say Havdalah. You just have to make sure to say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh Techol after Mariv, because you're going to have to take the matches and you have to light the candle and all that stuff. Okay. Well, if you didn't have the blessing for fire, perhaps one wouldn't have to say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh Techol if they were careful not to do any malacha before Havdalah. Lo tema. This is not. So what's the question? The apparently Havdalah over wine is optional, not obligatory. Previously we claimed it was obligatory. So don't say because you can say it over the chalice, but rather ema mipnei she'omra alakos, because you say it over the chalice. Gemara quotes the Tosefta, because he can recite the Havdalah over the cup of, don't say because he can recite the Havdalah over wine, rather say because he recites Havdalah over the cup of wine. Did you get that? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, just try tomorrow. We got to find another time for tomorrow. You want to turn up?
Yeah.
We got to find another time for tomorrow.
I'm going to just keep going.
Okay, go ahead. Another time for tomorrow.
Okay.
Maybe in the evening or something.
Sounds good. Yeah. You see, these are very long pages, so at least an hour, so we could do it.
Yeah. So other days we'll go at 6. We'll start again at 6. And then again, we'll start at 6.
Okay.
Hopefully the theme tonight's going to come.
Excellent. Okay, so alakos lo tema mipnei shecholam alakos, ela ema mipnei sheomra alakos. Okay, see you, Neil.
You'd love to come on a walk with us afterwards.
I'd love to. I just have some things to do. The Gemara says, it's just more emphatic. It's saying that the halacha is he recites the Havdalah over the wine. Itmar nami amar Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefed she'al Rabbi Yosei et Rabbi Yochanan b'tzidan amrila Rabbi Rishon ben Yaakov d'Minsor et Rabbi Yochanan ana shema'it amavdil b'tfilah tzarich she'avdil alakos olo amar lo tzarich she'avdil alakos. There was a discussion among the sages. One who recited Havdalah in the Amida, does he need to say it over the cup of wine afterwards or not? Rabbi Yochanan said he must say, even though you said it in Havdalah, you have to go back and say it alakos. Yibaylahu, amavdil alakos, ma'u she'avdil b'tfilah. A dilemma was raised before the sages. One who already recited Havdalah over wine, what is the ruling as far as his obligation to recite Havdalah in the Amida? Let's say you said it over the cup first. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Carlebach Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says it's an a fortiori understanding from prayer. Amat tefillah di ikar takanta hi amri, amavdil b'tefillah tzarich she'avdil alakos. Amavdil alakos, the lav ikar takanta hi lo kol sheken. Just as the Havdalah in the Amida prayer, which is the principal ordinance to recite Havdalah, was instituted, the sages said is not enough, and one who recited Havdalah in the Amida must recite Havdalah again over a cup of wine as well, all the more so one who recited Havdalah over the cup of wine, which is not where the principal ordinance to recite Havdalah was instituted. So the whole point is, then, if he said it over the wine, all the more so that he has to say it in the prayer afterwards. The point is that the principal place of saying it is the prayer, and the sages, for reasons we may discuss, is decided that they have to go again and say it over the wine. And we're talking about it. Perhaps it's a greater honor shown to God that we're taking our wine and our beautiful chalice and honoring God again, not just with our mouths, but also with our b'chol ma'odecha, as they say in the Shema, that we're supposed to love the Lord our God with all our heart and all our soul and all our possessions. So perhaps that's the reason they instituted this Havdalah over the cup as well as in the prayer. Tane Ravacha Aricha Kamed Rav Chinina Hamavdil B'Tfilah Mishubach Yoter Mimishi Avdil Alakos. One who recites Havdalah in the Amida prayer is more praiseworthy than one who recites it over the cup. Berakhot al Rosho. But there's an opposite opinion that, according to Rabbi Acha Aricha, and he said before Rav Chinina, no, the Havdalah in the prayer. No. So he agrees. Sorry, it's not an opposite opinion at all. It says that the Havdalah in the prayer is more praiseworthy than the Havdalah over the chalice. But if he did both, he gets a blessing upon his head. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Ha gufa kasha. This itself is difficult. Amratam avdil betfila meshuvach yoter mimishi avdil alakos. If you say that the blessing of the Havdalah in the prayer, in the Amidah, is greater than the one afterwards that you say over the cup of wine, Alma tefillah l'chudasagi, then it's greater, so you would lead you to believe that it's enough to say it in the prayer. And it's an optional thing, and if you did both, you get a special blessing, but it's not required. And since you fulfilled your obligation with just one of them, you fulfilled your obligation, you don't have to do it again. And then it would be not only would it be, if you go, with this kind of reasoning, that the second blessing of the Havdalah over the cup would be an unnecessary bracha. We have a principle that we only say the blessings that the sages instituted, and we can have in mind all kinds of things with blessings, and we can make up our own blessings in English, but we have the term that I really can't stand, statutory blessings. Kind of a ritually instituted blessings, I think is a less embarrassing way of saying it. And to say two blessings over the same thing, it's coming close to saying God's name in vain. In other words, a blessing that's unnecessary is, we're trying to only use God's name is a very powerful and holy thing. It's consuming fire. God's name. We're not going to just wantonly play around with fire. So to say, even though it's not, perhaps it's not a bona fide example of taking God's name in vain, it's getting close. We want to try to keep the Ten Commandments at least. Trying to keep the whole Torah. V'amar V'itema Reish Lakish, and Rav said, and some say Reish Lakish said, V'amri la Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish v'amri Tavayu. Rabbi Yochanan, some say both Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both said, Kol ha'mavarach b'rach Hashem etzricha over mishon lo tisa. They said it very clear. Somebody who says a bracha that's unnecessary, it's a violation of taking God's name in vain. Ela emahachi im hivdil b'zo v'lo hivdil b'zo yanuchu lo brachot al rosho. Say it this way: if you recited Havdalah in this one but not in that, may blessings rest upon his head. I think may he be blessed to say both of them, or is it mean a bracha klala, meaning that it's actually perhaps saying may the opposite of a blessing rest upon his head if he neglects to do both of them when he could do both of them. Saying, who needs it? I already said Havdalah. I believe it's the second interpretation. If you made a mistake, not intentionally, but a mistake in the blessings, what do you say? What do you do in the Havdalah? If you erred in Havdalah, what do you do? What is it considered? Amar le ta'av zovazo chozer l'rosh. If you made a mistake, in other words, if you forgot to say Havdalah in the Amidah prayer, and you've neglected to say Havdalah over the wine, or said it wrong perhaps, then he should go back to the Amida prayer over the wine. The halacha is one who failed to recite Havdalah in the Amida prayer and later ate before reciting. The error is that he ate before Havdalah. The whole point of Havdalah is we're taught that it's forbidden to eat on Saturday night until one has recited the Havdalah over the wine. Since eating was an action that was not permitted to perform, he is referred to one who's erred. So what does he do? He has to go back and say Amarav again and say the Havdalah in the fourth blessing of knowledge as is proper. Amar le Ravina le Rava. Hilchat Amai, Amar le ki kiddush ma kiddush afal gav de mekadosh bitzlota mekadosh akasa. Af Havdalah nami afal gav de mabdil bitzlota mabdil akasa. Ravina said to Rava, what's the law? He said, Kiddush, with Kiddush, or blessing the Sabbath over the cup of wine on Friday night at the meal, that even though we say a blessing for the Sabbath in the prayer on Friday night before the meal, when we pray we bless the Sabbath. So what do we say? Go ahead and say it at the table again for? Which the sages taught us to, because again, the idea is that we're not just doing it with our mouths, we're making a meal and we're using the wine, and there's a whole secret to the Torah of it also. The secret, if I'm permitted to say, may God permit me to reveal a secret, it's not such a secret anymore, is that the inner light, God's inner light is the prayer, and God's surrounding light is the meal. Meaning, when we pray, we're taking the inside of our breath, and we're bringing the inside out. So that's like a representation of God's inner light in a spiritual paradigm. And then afterwards, when we do an external action, and eating and saying wine in the physical world is considered like the surrounding light, as opposed to the inner light of the prayer. Rabbi Elazar Amar B'Hoda'ah. The Mishnah says, or Rabbi Elazar says, that we say Havdalah is said in the 17th blessing of Thanksgiving of the 18 blessings. Rabbi Zera have a rechiv chamer. Havakas shekel ba'azel Rabbi Chia bar Avin batre. Rabbi Zera was riding on a donkey, and Rabbi Chia bar Avin was coming and walking after him. Amar le vadai amritu mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan halachak Rabbi Eliezer b'yom tov shechal liot achar Shabbat. Is it true that you said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer in the case of a festival that occurs directly after Shabbos, since in that case one cannot recite Havdalah in the blessing of who graciously grants knowledge, as it is not included in the Amida prayer on the festival, there is no alternative but to adopt Rabbi Eliezer's ruling, that you have to say it in the Hodah, which we do say also on the festival. Said to him, yes, that's true. Halacha, miklal de pligi. Amar Wonders said, saying that halacha in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer indicates that his peers dispute his opinion. Where do we find that dispute? So when it says in the Gemara, halacha miklal de pligi, that when you say the halacha of a minority opinion, and you say that the minority opinion is the halacha, now it's not a minority opinion. There's two opinions. We haven't established the law, because we don't know the law from the Mishnah. The Talmud, we don't know the law from the Gemara. We may perhaps know the law from the Gemara, if we know how to derive it correctly, but basically we rely on the early commentaries of the Gemara that derived the law of the conclusion of the passages and the sections of the Gemara. So there's the dispute. Rabbi Eliezer says you put Havdalah in the 17th blessing. The sages say, the rabbis disagreed with them and they said, no, we put it in the 4th blessing. So,
hello.
hi. בוקר טוב.
אני צריך למקור.
בבקשה.
אז אם אתה יכול לזוז...
לאן?
לאן? לא יודע.
אתה יכול להתחיל שם?
מה?
אתה יכול להתחיל שם?
לא, אני צריך לסדר את זה לתפילה, עוד מעט יש תפילה.
אוקיי.
אתה פתחת פה?
לא.
מי פתח?
ניר.
מתי?
6:15. אני פשוט מקליט, אז...
מה?
אני פשוט מקליט, אז זה לא... אתה צריך לשים את השופן שם.
אז אולי זה למקום אחר.
כן, כן. Okay, we're going to pause here and Lee Neder will start another time.